Okay. All right. Well, great. Thanks, Nikki. Okay, everyone. Well, welcome to the Recreational Trails Application Workshop. I'm Victor Bettino, the manager of the program, and I'm happy to go ahead and have the rest of our team introduce themselves. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I am Richard Rendon, and I am the Recreational Trails Program State Trail Administrator. Welcome today, and I hope you guys are full of questions for us. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kyle Bolin. I'm one of the competitive review project officers. I'll be presenting today, and thank you for joining us.
And hello, my name is Nikki Lambert. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here. I'd like to introduce our behind the scenes folks and staff. First up, we have Sam Cadeau, who is the master of the screen share and will be running our screen today. We also have Natalie B., Esmeralda Bermudez, and Adela Valdez, as well as Megan Harrison. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to helping you out today.
Great. Thank you, team. So we're very excited to have you today, and thank you so much for your interest. We look forward to answering your questions throughout the webinar. I'll be looking at your chat questions, and Natalie B will also help as well. So we look forward to your questions in the chat feature, and then also at the end of the webinar today, we'll also have some time for some open discussions, questions and answers at the end. So this webinar will be about 2 hours, and great, thank you, team. We have a team that's always ready to help with the mutes in case someone does that. So that's always a handy tool. This program has historically been one of our, I think, more popular programs in terms of the ratio requested to the amount available. We are, again, combining multiple federal fiscal years into one cycle, so that way we can make more available to applicants for this cycle coming up. And Richard will go over the details with you and more in a few minutes to further explain how much is made available to California, and of that portion, how much goes towards our office for non-motorized recreational trails for this upcoming application cycle. But I'd just like to say that the trail community is passionate. We miss doing these application workshops in person. And it's clear to us that when we do application workshops for this program, there's definitely a lot of interest and passion from the audience. So we hope you'll find today's workshop to be as enjoyable as possible for a webinar. And again, we look forward to your questions. Thank you very much. And Richard, you're up.
Thank you, Victor. So first of all, I would like to thank you for being here with us. So today we will out of the Recreational Trails Program Procedural Guide, as well as the Frequently Asked Questions document, which are both found on the program website. We will put the link for the website in the chat box, and we ask for participants to have them available for this workshop. So to kind of go over a little bit of housekeeping first, I would like to call your attention to a few Microsoft Teams features participants should be aware of during this webinar. So the first is a chat feature which Sam is circling. It is the little cartoon bubble there. So you go ahead and click on there if you want to. So that'll get you to our chat feature. And so we will be monitoring that, and we'll answer any questions directly in the chat. Also, during the presentation today, Victor may be addressing some questions out loud for the group to hear collectively. Additionally, if there is a thumbs up icon next to a question, that is just our way of communicating with each other internally as to whom will be responding to your question. For those who do not see the chat feature, past participants have been able to access it by exiting and re-entering the workshop. Please keep any questions related to the topic at hand. For instance, if there is a question related to CEQA, please wait to ask about CEQA until we are covering it in our presentation. So the second thing I'd like to kind of go over are any technical issues with sound or video. So if this happens, please email ogals@parks.ca.gov. That is OGALS@parks.ca.gov. We will put the email in the chat box, which is already here. Thank you, Victor. If there is an audio issue, please send a direct line phone number to the ogals@parks.ca.gov email, and we can dial that number directly into our workshop today. Also, this webinar will be recorded. If there is any complete internet connection loss, rest assured that all the information is on our Recreational Trails Program website, and we will upload a recording of these webinars in the next week or so. So lastly, on the housekeeping part is closed captioning. Here, Sam is showing you where the 3 dots, the ellipsis is. So you just click on there and then go down to the drop down where it says turn on live captions. So this along with the, so closed captioning can be accessed there. So now let's switch over to the Recreational Trails Program webpage. And so here, Sam will be circling the most current guide, which is in both PDF and Microsoft Word formats. See it there? So this, along with the frequently asked questions, are the main documents that we will be reviewing today. Prior to this workshop, we did ask all attendees to have both documents available to them during the workshop, as we will be referring to both throughout it. The screen will show which page the presenter is speaking about. Presenters will also name the page, number and document being shown. Please use the chat feature to ask where we are if the need arises. And finally, yes, that is the 2007 guide that we will be using for this. So that is our most recent and final document that is in regulation. So that's the one we will be using. So let's move on to the frequently asked questions document. So this document provides additional clarifying information based on questions that we frequently see during application cycles. And it is an important document as a partner to the guide and will help clarify items found in the guide. This document is based on all the questions we have received over the 20 years that I've been in this office and since this guide, so that's 14, almost 15 years for this guide. So this document is based on all those questions that we have received throughout the years. Moving right along back to our web page. You'll see that eligible applicants are cities, counties, districts, state agencies, federal agencies, and finally, nonprofit organizations with management responsibilities over public lands. If you keep on scrolling, there is information about our current authorization, which is an extension of the FAST Act, which stands for Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. And this was signed by President Obama way back in 2015. And so this right here on our website is the apportionment diagram. So you can see California receives about $5.7 million from the feds, and that is split up amongst our department, that's California Department of Parks and Recreation, as well as our partners over at Caltrans at $2.3 million for their active transportation program. So for state parks, we receive roughly about 60% of the apportionment, which equals out to approximately $3.4 million. And that is split evenly between the non-motorized component, which is administered by our office, the Office of Grants and Local Services, for about $1.7 million a year. And then the other half goes over to our motorized component, which is administered by our Off-Highway Motor Vehicle Recreation Division. And so, that's kind of the flow chart of how everything kind of works out for FAST Act. So if you scroll down, there's a little thing on our website about payment requests. This is only for current grantees, and it is not necessary for this workshop. It is only for those projects that have been recommended for funding already. We also include a little section here about partnership opportunities. This is linked to Criterion 14, which Service Corps, which we will be going over in a little bit. Applicants are definitely encouraged to develop an agreement with a Service Corps. We have provided the link to the California Conservation Corps to assist applicants in getting the conversation started, and we recommend that you get this conversation started early on the consultation with one of the Service Corps. Scrolling down, there are additional resources that we provide. So we have provided links and information that applicants may find useful. The first one is about our Roads and Trails program, which provides education and technical assistance regarding non-motorized trail planning, design, construction, funding, as well as management throughout California. There's also a non-motorized recreational trails program project officer contacts. We will do our best to answer all participants' questions through the chat feature today. If we are not able to get to a question, or if applicants would like to discuss their project more in depth, please contact the assigned competitive project officer, which Sam is circling right now, and he's going to click on it. So here, once it pops up, the competitive review project officers can be found in the green column and are listed by county, which Sam is highlighting. Our project officers, as always, are happy to help and will be here to help you up to the application deadline. So then now we can go ahead and go back to our website to finish our overview of our website. And then finally, there is information about our motorized sub-program for the recreational trails. And here is the link to the contact there, and his name is Ethan Mathis. And so so that concludes our overview of the web page. So now we're going to go to the workshop agenda. So here you'll see we're right smack in the middle of introductions and workshop orientation. We are now in the second one talking about the agenda. So once you get through with this, we will begin our program overview, which is the first 16 pages of the guide. And then we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit, and we are going to go to what I like to call the meat and potatoes of this program, and that is the application form and project proposal. The project proposal is the criteria that you will answer, and that will be set in stone by once you submit it on March 1st, 2022 by 5:00 p.m. So we will definitely go over those. Then after that, we will go back and then hit all the application checklist overview items. We will talk about application forms and eligible costs. And then finally, we will have a closure by our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell, who is the Deputy Director of our Community Engagement Division. So that is a workshop agenda. And then now I'd like to kind of go to the Recreational Trails Program timeline. So here is the expected timeline for the program. Most of these dates are determined by when the Federal Highway Administration approves the project. So here you'll notice the first date is November of 2021. This is our third application webinar for the Recreational Trails Program. So between now and March 1st of 2022, our project officers will be available for any questions that you may have regarding your specific project in the county where your project officer will be assigned. So once the application deadline passes, our competitive review project officers in the spring of 2022 will conduct their application review. So we endeavor that our department will have announcements regarding recommended projects by the summer of 2022. And then you'll notice that there is a yellow highlighted row here that is for the fall of 2022 through the summer of 2023. So if your project is recommended for funding in the summer of next year, you will then be going into your project will be going into phase 2, and that phase 2 is, if it's a development project, the first 3 bulleted items in the right-hand column will apply to your project. So you'll have to go through the NEPA process, which is a National Environmental Policy Act. You'll also have to complete Section 106. And then finally, you'll need to have your project listed on your local transportation improvement plan. So how is this done? Well, luckily in this program, our partners over at Caltrans do essentially walk us through the process. So if your project is recommended for funding, we will hold a mandatory federal requirements workshop to kind of give you the form you'll need to conduct NEPA and Section 106. And then we will consult with Caltrans, and they will let us know if there are any further studies needed for NEPA and whether or not you'll need a cultural resources study done for Section 106. So finally, the transportation improvement plan is a piece of cake, because all that happens there is that we send over a list to Caltrans, and then they send out a group email to the metropolitan planning organizations or the regional transportation or the rural transportation planning associations to add these projects to the local TIP. So we generally say that these may take up to a year. I've seen them done faster, but I've also seen them done about a year to 12 to 14 months. So to kind of keep that in mind. So the other thing is that if you are applying for an acquisition project, then all 4 of these bullet points will apply for you. So you'll have to do your NEPA, the Section 106, the Transportation Improvement Plan, and you'll have to do an appraisal that conforms to the Uniform Appraisal Standards for federal land acquisitions, which is commonly referred to as Yellow Book Standards. So that is that. And so once your project gets through these federal requirements, then our office will package up everything, including all the NEPA and Section 106 and confirmation that your project is listed on the Transportation Improvement Plan. Then all that gets forwarded over to our partners over at Federal Highway Administration, California Division. So they have 15 working days to review and approve the project. So you can rest assured that once you receive approval for all the federal requirements, you should have a project with a grant performance period that is unique to each project. So what does this mean? This means that once prior to sending your project over to Federal Highway, we will ask you for additional information of a project milestone timeline, which you will come up with your own unique project completion date. And it can be up to 5 years from federal approval. So the usual information that I give people is figure out your timeline. Then you may want to add a year to it, just in case there are any unforeseen circumstances that may happen. You may have floods, you may have fires, you may have rain. You know, who knows what's going to happen here in California. So I would just kind of keep that in mind. Don't trim your milestones so tight that if there's anything that happens, like one bad weather day, that your project is going to be stalled. So I would just kind of give yourself some time, some breathing room, and just kind of plan ahead for those types of things. So with that, keep in mind that the deadline for this grant is March 1st of 2022, and applications must be submitted by 5:00 p.m. We strongly recommend that you get your application in early and not wait until 4:59 p.m. on March 1st to submit your application. This will definitely help you rest easy and help everybody kind of avoid any type of issues that always comes when you have a flood and a flurry of applications trying to be submitted by 5 o'clock. So with that, that concludes my long-winded section of this, and so I am going to send it over to Nikki. Nikki?
Hey, thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. So before we jump into the criteria, let's talk about eligible and non-eligible projects. So if you could all turn to page 13 if you have the guide with you. And if you're following along on that frequently asked questions document, you'll find this on page 2 and 3. So eligible non-motorized projects, which are found in the left column on page 13 here, include acquisition of easements and fee simple title to property, development and rehabilitation, such as fixing an underlying problem, such as draining and redoing an alignment, resurfacing a trail because the life expectancy of the surface has passed, or maybe changing the type of surface. So you're going from paved to non-paved or non-paved to paved. Then we have also construction of new trails or expanding or linking trails. And keep in mind that no higher priority is going to be given to either paved, decomposed granite, or natural trails. They're all scored the same. And then we have landscaping and habitat restoration. Now, mainly this is ineligible, and there's exceptions here, and those are when it's needed to prevent trail degradation with erosion on the trail, and if the landscaping will be directly adjacent to the trail. So if it's helping with that erosion adjacent to the trail. And then also habitat restoration may be needed where a trail is being realigned and the old trail alignment is being decommissioned and restored back to a natural state. So those are the two eligible exceptions for landscaping and habitat restoration. So let's move over to the next page, which is 14, and we'll take a look at those ineligible projects. So these include, and there's a whole list here, as you can see. I'll go through only a few of these. Some ineligible projects will include any acquisition which involves eminent domain of any kind, any projects that involve highway construction, projects required as a mitigation measure as a condition for a permit or other entitlement. And this one is pretty big, projects that do not have public access. You definitely want to have public access with your project. And keep in mind here, along with those landscaping, habitat restoration, ineligible projects, we also include routine maintenance. That's not eligible as well. Okay. So now we're going to turn over to page 25, and this is the project proposal. And as Rich mentioned, these are the meat and potatoes of your meal here, of your application. The project proposal is item number 3 on the application checklist, which we'll go over a little bit later in the application, in the workshop, excuse me. So the project proposal includes criterion 1 through 14. Now, these criteria are critical, and they must be completed and finalized by the application deadline, as they are how applications are reviewed and scored. Now, each criterion is an opportunity to gain points. There are 100 points maximum to be gained overall, and every application starts with 0 points. So scoring rubrics can be found with each criterion, and so applicants should conceptualize and propose a project that will score the most points. And you'll use those rubrics to see how you're going along with your application. So one more thing before we jump into the criterion, I just want to acknowledge, and I mentioned earlier where to find something on the frequently asked questions document, and I know Richard mentioned it a few times, But we did ask for participants for the workshop to have both the guide and the frequently asked questions, or FAQ document, available to them during the workshop. So the frequently asked questions document does go hand in hand with this guide. And as we discuss each criterion or a checklist item, we will also let you know where it can be found in that FAQ document. So if you're taking notes as we go along, you can have either one to take notes in. So let's jump right into the criterion. And this starts at the page, on page 25, right at the bottom. And Sam is scrolling down for us. Thank you. So this criterion number 1, which is deficiency, is also found on page 7 of the frequently asked questions document. All right, applicants should describe the trail deficiencies and why the project is needed here. And please note in that scoring rubric, which shows that projects in an area without trails, which help complete an important trail system and or correct major design or construction activities, do gain the most points. And this can include project sites that have degraded to become burdens on natural and cultural resources, and also have major design or construction deficiencies. So if those include trails rendered unusable due to erosion. So we did criterion number 1. Now we're going to go over to page 26 and take a look at criterion number 2, which is the solutions to deficiency. And this is also found on page 7 in the frequently asked questions document. So this is where applicants will discuss how the project addresses the deficiencies found in criterion number 1 by describing how the project will significantly increase the use, improve access, and or protect resources. So if criteria number 1 is where the applicant establishes the need, then criteria number 2 is where the applicant is establishing the benefit. Now, some examples include projects that provide solutions in an area that lacks trails or trail opportunities, maybe reconstruct or relocate trails to increase usability and or the access, maybe reconstruct non-sustainable trails, or maybe you're looking to rehabilitate or relocate old trails to reduce environmental impacts. Now, please note here, non-motorized trail maintenance is ineligible. I did mention that earlier, wanted to bring it up again. So maintenance includes items such as clearing and brushing, water bar installation or cleaning, seal coating of paved trails, painting, and other similar items. You see some listings down there at the bottom of the page. All right, we're going to move over to criterion number 3, which is connectivity. And this is found on page 27. And also in the companion document of the frequently asked questions, you'll find it on page 7 as well. So here applicants are asked to describe how the project joins or is part of a trail system. So providing connections to or that are part of a regional, state, or national trail system will receive the most points, as you can see here in that scoring rubric. I do want to mention that park could also mean open space. Now, only if that open space is designated for recreation use. Now, if there is no connection to a regional, state, or national trail system, or the project is not in a park, the application will score 0. Please use that chat feature if you have any questions. I know we have been using it quite a lot today. And I see that Victor wants to address something to the group. So Victor, go ahead before we hand it over to Kyle.
Great, thank you, Nikki. So we had a question from Tara about what type of funds or projects have been awarded historically. And, you know, that question, I'm going to use that question to go back to both criteria 1 and 2, looking at the need for the project and benefits, and deficiency and benefits under criteria 1 and criteria 2. And if you look at your FAQ questions and answers document, where it does discuss criteria 1 and 2, there is a hint that having no trail at all and proposing to develop a new trail segment, a new trail section, clearly will meet a deficiency because there's no trail at all, and a benefit. So I believe, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last 2 or maybe even 3 cycles all funded the creation of new trail segments that did not previously exist. I don't think there were any renovations, at least in the last 2 rounds. So keep that in mind. If that continues, then the creation of a new trail segment could, definitely achieve meeting both the deficiency and benefits. Now, for renovation of an existing trail, it's a tougher hill to climb to describe the need and deficiency if the trail is still usable when you compare that with another area that has no trail at all, or there's a gap and there's a need to develop a new segment to close that gap and cover the linkage that Nikki was talking about as well. Okay, so keep that in mind that in the past few cycles, new trails have been more competitive than renovations of trails, especially when those renovations are for trails that are still usable. Okay, so I hope that helps. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Victor, for answering those questions. If we go to page 27, we will look at criteria number 4, linkages. This is also on page 7 and 8 of the frequently asked questions document. Linkages focus is on trails within a town or city that links a population center such as homes, schools, workplaces, etc., or gathering areas to a recreation area such as a natural, cultural, or historical area. The key is the trail must link where people live or gather to a recreation destination. Applicants should describe how the project connects to these population centers, as well as noting the proximity of the project to highways and or major roadways. Please note that trails may be located along a highway as a connector where no other feasible route exists. Trails must be separated from a road and not within a road right-of-way. Anything that extends into the road right-of-way is not eligible. Trails that are separated from a highway are more of a priority and are more competitive. Separation can be distance or a physical barrier. If the trail is adjacent to a highway or road, applicants should explain why it is not feasible for the project to be located further from the highway or road. The scoring for this criterion includes the following types of linkages: a major linkage or a minor linkage. A major link is used by at least an entire city or town as a trail that links to a popular recreation destination. A minor link is used by a neighborhood that links to a recreation destination. Keep in mind, this is about the linkage created through this project and not future trail segments. Next, on to page 28, where we will see criteria number 5, number of project users. This is also found on page 8 at the bottom of the frequently asked questions document. Applicants should provide an estimated number on the average annual visitation of users of the project. Applicants may want to look at nearby trails, campgrounds, resorts, or other outdoor recreation features and its actual annual visitation numbers to create a realistic estimate. The Office of Grants Local Services acknowledges that there are various methods to calculate the number of users and understands that it may be difficult for new trails. Therefore, applicants should consider the reasonable probability that the trail will have high, medium, or low use based on the location of the trail and its intended use. Scrolling to the bottom of page 28 is criterion number 6, project user accessibility. This criterion starts on the very bottom of page 8 of the frequently asked questions document and continues on to page 9. Here, a description of how the project is accessible to all population groups, including people with disabilities. The highest amount of accessibility means no Federal Access Board FAB departures are needed. For non-paved trails, follow and cite Federal Access Board guidelines, also known as FAB guidelines. The intent is to enable non-paved trail developers or builders to make trails fully accessible. The FAB guidelines allow departures, and they outline the conditions that permit the departures and which or what type of departures are qualified. If a departure is needed, the applicant should cite the FAB guidelines along with an explanation on why it is needed. Departure examples include compliance is not feasible because of terrain or prevailing construction practices. Compliance would conflict with mandates such as Endangered Species Act or other laws, or it would fundamentally alter a site's function or purpose. For paved trails, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, also known as AASHTO, design standards must be used for all paved trails. A statement is acceptable. If the applicant does not provide any response at all or fails to attempt to follow the FAB or AASHTO guidelines, the project will be determined ineligible. Please turn to page 29 for criteria number 7, access to the project. And this criterion can also be found on page 9 of the frequently asked questions document. The intent of this criterion is to describe access to the trail and or trailhead. That is, how do people get to the trail or trailhead from work or their home? It is not about FAB or AASHTO guidelines covered in criterion number 6. This criterion works in conjunction with checklist item number 2, site plan, which can be found on page 20 of the application guide. The site plan should include access points. When reviewing the scoring rubric, we see the following qualities gain more points. Easily accessible to all, have few barriers such as major thoroughfares, eliminate barriers, have on-site or close-by parking, accessible through public transportation, or is adjacent to where a large population lives or works. At the bottom of this page, we'll find criterion 8, points of interest. This is also found at the bottom of page 9 of the frequently asked questions document. Applicants will discuss how the project will view and interpret natural, cultural, historical, or scenic characteristics. This criterion is about what can be viewed and interpreted from the trail segment funded by the grant plus matching, no other trail segments. On the following page, page 30, is criterion number 9, sustainable design. This can also be found at the top of page 10 of the frequently asked questions document. Applicants should provide descriptions to the 10 listed sustainable design features, including how a maintainable design will be utilized so there are minimal impacts to natural or cultural resources, how the trail design or construction techniques will reduce maintenance needs, how the project is placed to maximize the design elements while minimizing complexity that can lead to an increase in maintenance costs. Rehabilitation projects should describe how the improvements will replace and eliminate problem areas while creating sustainable features. Projects will be scored on how well they meet the features listed. A feature can be marked as not applicable. If a feature is marked as not applicable and has an explanation as to why it is not applicable, the applicant's score will not be impacted. The explanation of the examples is listed on page 30 here, A through J. Please put any questions you may have into the chat feature, and I'll be turning it over to Richard.
Thanks, Kyle. So now can we please turn to page 31, where I will talk about criterion number 10, diversified use, and also criterion 11, including stakeholders in the project. So criterion 10, diversified use, is also on page 10 in the frequently asked questions document. So here in this criterion, diversity for this is about who the users are, such as equestrians, bicyclists, pedestrians, cross-country skiers, snowshoers, etc. Applicants should explain how the project will be for multiple users and or corridor sharing. More points will be gained with more more of the possible project users in the project. So here you'll see in the rubric that if you have 3 or more user types, you'll gain the highest point value, which is 5. 2 use types are 3 points, and 1 use type is 1 point. If you did not respond, you get the 0. So moving down the page to criterion 11, which is including stakeholders in the project. This also can be found on the bottom of page 10 of your frequently asked questions document. So here, applicants should discuss how potential users, public agencies, project partners were engaged in the planning and will be engaged in the project. Applicants should answer the 3 bulleted questions here. The first one is, what methods were used to foster a high degree of participation and human interaction? Some examples can include conducting trail design walks with community residents, partners, local historians, and/or environmental specialists. This can also include planning meetings. The second bullet is, what were the methods of notification? Here, it can be how many people direct in-person invitations were extended, how many door hangers were distributed, how many ads in the local newspapers were published, or how many social media accounts were used. And then finally, how were volunteers utilized in designing the project? How will volunteers be utilized in implementing the project? So here, volunteers could help with the design of the trail route. They can also help haul soil during trail construction, or they can provide translation services during planning meetings. Maximum points will be given in this criterion to those applicants who made the most concerted effort to involve the broadest representation in the process. Next, on page 32 is criterion 12, which deals with consistency with other plans. Information about this in your frequently asked question document can be found on page 11. So in this criterion, projects should be consistent with the applicant's general plan or equivalent planning document in order to be eligible. Equivalent plans can include the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, otherwise known as SCORP. There is the state recreational trails plan. A city, county, or regional master plan will suffice. Those projects that are consistent with more than one plan will gain the most points. So you'll see in the rubric, 5 to 4 points will be given that if you're consistent with more than one plan. Staying on page 32, we will now review criterion number 13, which is management capacity. As the previous criterion, this can also be found on page 11 of your FAQ document. So here, applicants should provide a description of the agency and/or partner's capability to provide all aspects of the trail management process, along with project planning, design, layout, construction, maintenance, and operation. Applicants should answer the following. What demonstrated ability or type of training has the applicant or partners received to implement the proposed project? Applicants should address the 6 bullet points under elements of excellent trail management process on page 32 by citing their experience, training, or other qualifications of their staff and partners that will be responsible for each element. And then finally, on the next page, 33, we have our final criterion, which is criterion number 14, Service Corps involvement. And this is split between pages 11 and 12 of your FAQ document. Here, applicants should contact the California Conservation Corps, the California Association of Local Conservation Corps, or other service corps to discuss and agree upon how the Corps could be involved in the project contingent upon grant award. The Office of Grants and Local Services supports any and all involvement, whether it is designing the trail, constructing the trail, or even maintaining the trail. Applicants who contact any of the Corps will gain points even if the Corps cannot participate. As shown earlier, when we reviewed the RTP website, we have provided a link to the California Conservation Corps, and we can't stress how important it is to complete this consultation as early as possible. So this concludes our grant criterion, and next up we will dive into checklist items. And so if you have any questions, please put those in the chat feature. It doesn't look like Victor has any questions to answer. So we are going to move on to Nikki. Nikki, you're up.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. So now we are going to go turn over to page 19 and look at the state application process. And the information for the process starts on page 4 of the frequently asked questions document, if you're following along with that. So applicants should use the checklist on pages 19, 20, 21, and 22 to organize their application. Now, I really wanted to point this out that the letters of support are not requested. If the applicant agency requires submission of letters of support, please have those addressed to the applicant agency. Any letters addressed to the Office of Grants and Local Services or the department itself can slow down the whole review process. So checklist item number 13, which we just went over, is the project proposal, and that includes all the criterion we just discussed with the scoring rubrics. So the criterion answers must be completed and finalized at that application deadline. Now, if a checklist item is not applicable to applicants, the applicant must provide a brief explanation as to why it is not applicable to them. So let's turn to page 23, please, and we'll take a look at the application form. More information on this form is found on page 4 of the frequently asked questions document. A few things we'd like to point out here. In the top right corner of the form, where the grant request, required match, and total project cost amounts should go, applicants should ensure that the amount shown here matches the other forms, such as the cost estimate. Now, the match amount is a minimum 12%, and matching sources can include state, local, or private funds. And the grant scope, the big block right here in the middle of the page, provides a description of the project, and that should include only the items to be completed through that total project cost, which is your grant request plus your match amount. And it should be detailed enough to identify each project element that will be accomplished by the grant, and it should be consistent with that cost estimate form, the CEQA documents, and your site plan. So checklist item number 2, which is your site plan, and the checklist item number 3, which is your topographic map, are both found on page 4 of the frequently asked questions document, if you're following along with that. And these two are for development projects only. And applicants may combine the site plan and the topographic map into one document, as long as all the elements mentioned in both of the checklist item instructions are present on the document. Now, if we can turn over to page, Sam, yeah, thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. You read my mind. So checklist item number 4, which is the trail log or inventory or the reconnaissance notes. These are on page 5 of the frequently asked question document. Now, for unpaved trails, applicants should submit a detailed trail log. And for paved trails, applicants should submit field reconnaissance notes. If preliminary plans are available, those can be submitted in lieu of the reconnaissance notes. And for more information on this, you'll want to look at the definitions section at the very beginning of the guide. I believe it's on pages 2 and 3. In addition, the trail log does provide a more accurate basis of cost estimating a trail project. So we do suggest that applicants walk the trail alignment. That'll help provide a good cost estimate. And it'll also help establish a beginning and end point and some other items in there. You'll want to refer to page 5 of the frequently asked questions document for some more tips and suggestions on the trail log. Taking a look at checklist item number 5, which is your design standards. This is also found on page 5 of the frequently asked questions document. And this is also another checklist item for development projects only. Now, applicants will have to submit 2 items for this. One is the specific design standard that will be used for the project. And you might have heard Kyle mention a few of those earlier, such as the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, the National Park Service Standard, California State Park Standards, U.S. Forest Service. There's other applicable standards, whichever one you choose. Applicants can also use a local city's design standards if there is an established set of trail design standards with the city. The other item that should be submitted here is representative samples of the chosen standards for the project. And this can include conceptual drawings, logs, plans, etc. Moving over to checklist item number 6, this is the cost estimate. This is also found on page 5 of the frequently asked questions. So you may want to note here, the project cost estimate form is found on page 37. And then we also have the eligible cost chart on page 39. So we're going to move to page 36 though, and take a look at the cost estimate instructions. So here are the instructions. Now keep in mind, this is an estimate, and our office does understand that costs do fluctuate for items. So now let's take a look at the cost estimate form, which I mentioned was on page 37. So with this form, applicants are more than welcome to reformat or change the content as needed. Applicants complete this cost estimate to ensure that only eligible costs are within that grant scope and that no more than 25% of the grant amount and required match is spent on non-construction and land acquisition costs. Now for the match columns, you only need to complete the subtotal and total rows, and you do not need to enter a match amount in that cross-hatched shaded area over there on the left. Now keep in mind that no project costs are eligible until the date of federal approval and funding authorization. So you have to have those before you have eligible costs. Applicants should ensure the grant request amount and total project costs are the same as the application form. You want those to match. For those with acquisition projects, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the acquisition schedule. That's on page 38 of the guide. And acquisition projects will need to submit these. I'm going to pause here to let you all take a quick look at this form and what's involved. So you'll see you'll need the assessor's parcel number, your acreage amount, the estimated date of the acquisition, the value of the land that's going to be acquired, the value of any improvements, any estimated costs that you might have for relocation if that's applicable, and then of course you have your total estimated costs. All right, let's move over to page 39 and take a look at eligible cost charts. And these are also on 40 and 41 as well. And all these eligible costs are presented in chart format, and these charts have 2 columns. The first is what the costs can be, and the second column is examples of those costs. So grantees may only claim costs directly related to the grant. Indirect costs or charges made as a percentage of cost are not eligible. So please make note of that. All right, let's take a look at checklist item number 7, and that is the project location map. So applicants should submit a map, either a city or county map, that allows individuals unfamiliar with the area to locate the project. And as you can see, this item's at the very bottom of page 20, as well as checklist item number 8, which is photos of the project site. Now, photos of the project site, we do have that in the frequently asked questions document on page 6. Now, the photos is a pretty straightforward item. Applicants should just submit photos of the project site. I do want to note here that videos, including drone footage, is allowable if you're thinking about doing that. And we do ask that photos be labeled with what reviewers are seeing, such as the direction in which the viewer is looking and any other details that might be necessary. So an example of a photo label could be, we're looking at turn 2 from the northeast. Please use that chat to ask any questions, and I'm going to pass the baton to Kyle.
Thank you, Nikki. Moving to page 21, we'll look at checklist item number 2, land ownership. And this is also found on page 6 of the frequently asked question document. For development projects, applicants must certify that they have tenure and site control of the properties. Land tenure includes ownership, lease, easement, or an agreement where the applicant has site control. For landowners, applicants who own the property should include the recordation numbers on the application form. Land leasers, if the applicant does not own the project site or is not proposing an acquisition to become the landowner, they will need to provide an agreement with the landowner that gives sufficient site control to the applicant. Drafting, negotiating, and executing lease agreements can be time-consuming. Lease agreements can be reviewed in advance of the application. Applicants should contact their project officer for a land tenure checklist and to discuss the potential lease. Applicants that do not own the property are required to enter into the following agreement lengths. Grants greater than $100,000 require at least 20 years. Grants up to and including $100,000 require at least and up to 10 years. Next, we'll move on to checklist item 10, California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA. This is also found on page 6 of the frequently asked questions document. Applicants must demonstrate compliance with CEQA by the application deadline. This is done by providing the following: a copy of the notice of determination or other CEQA documentation, project approval by the lead agency. Please note, federal applicants and projects on federal land must comply with NEPA. Moving on to checklist item number 11, the authorizing resolution or agency letter. This is also found on page 6 of the frequently asked questions document. There is a revised authorized resolution form, which can be found on the Recreation Trails program website, or you can contact your competitive review project officer. We'll put a link in the chat box for the project officers. The applicant may reformat the resolution. However, any changes to the resolution language require the department's approval and may require a legal review. Items 1 through 6 must be present. The position designated in resolution item 5 must sign all application forms in the packet. Federal or state agency applicants will submit an agency letter in lieu of an authorizing resolution. Next is checklist item number 12, project summary. This summary should explain the project and its enhancements. Next is checklist item 13, project proposal. This is also found on page 6 of the frequently asked questions document. As mentioned earlier, this checklist item must be completed and finalized at the time of the application. This item includes the project criteria and it is critical that this checklist item be completed by the deadline, because this is how the application is scored and ranked. This must be completed by March 1st, 2022, before 5:00 p.m. All other checklist items can be submitted at a later date, but a placeholder with information about the expected completion date and timeline should be included with the application by the deadline. Please contact your project officer for further information. Also, please do not wait until the last minute or last day to submit your application. Checklist item 14 is next. That's leases and agreements. For this checklist item, applicants will provide a list of all other leases, agreements, memorandum of understanding, etc., affecting the project lands. This includes leases and agreements that do not pertain to land tenure. For example, agreement to graze the property or a concessionaire agreements. Applicants should label each lease and agreement clearly. If you have any questions, please contact your project officer. Moving on to page 22, we will review the final two checklist items, 15 and 16. Checklist item 15 is required. Yes, Victor?
Kyle, we have a internal request for a 5-minute break, and we normally will break at every hour or so. We're getting close to the end of the webinar, everyone, but we are getting some good questions, and let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene at 11:37. Okay, thanks, Kyle. Thank you.
All right, it is 11:37. 5-minute break is over. We're going to be moving to page 22, where we are reviewing the final two checklist items, 15 and 16. Checklist item 15, required regulatory permits. Applicants should provide a list of existing and additional required permits along with their status and date of approval expectation. Checklist item 16 is nonprofit requirements. This is also found on page 6 of the frequently asked questions document. If an applicant is a nonprofit organization, they must submit the following items: articles of incorporation, mission statement, most recent annual report and budget, and verification of 501c3 status in IRS document. Checklist item 17 is no longer applicable. If you have a hard copy, you can cross that out. This is the end of the checklist items. Please put any questions into the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Cedric.
It'll be me, Kyle. I have some just final closing thoughts here, and then we'll move it over to Victor to do Cedric's part.
All right.
All right. Thank you, sir. So this does conclude the technical assistance portion of our presentation today. So just to reorient everyone on where we currently are, let's take a look at the timeline. So Sam, quick fingers, has already got it up here. So just to review, the key dates here are between now and March 1st of 2022 at 5 o'clock. Our project officers will be here for any technical assistance questions you may have. And keep in mind that that technical assistance doesn't necessarily end on the application deadline. But so what's going to happen is that during the spring of 2022 in the application review, if there's any further information that we will need outside of the grant selection criteria, which is frozen at 5 o'clock on March 1st, we will work diligently with you to get any forms or any additional material needed completed and sent back to us. So that's our promise to you. And then again, we hope to have announcements for recommended projects by next summer. With that, and then there is the up to a year to 14 months to complete the federal requirements after our mandatory federal requirements workshop. And then finally, completion of your grant is going to be a unique grant performance period. So we'll walk you through that too in the fall of 2023. So that is the end of that. So I'm going to kind of go back and look at and kind of review the Recreational Trails Program webpage one more time, just to kind of show, just kind of give you one last look at the website and kind of know where you can find the things that we talked about today. So here, it's kind of in the middle of the Rec Trails webpage is the current Recreational Trails Program procedural guide that Sam is circling, which is reads final June 4th, 2007. That is our guide we are using for this upcoming for this upcoming application workshop deadline. And then underneath that, the resolution that Kyle talked about with the revised language, it is right here underneath it. So that is a PDF fillable form. So you can have that. And then underneath there is our other very important document, and that is a frequently asked questions document, which provides clarification and just answers to questions that we've received since this guide was put up in regulation. So there's that, and then I think with that I am done. Then I think I'm going to switch it over to Victor to kind of give us some final thoughts. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Richard and team. So we'll stick around till we'll stick around to answer any more questions that come in, because our webinar is ending a bit early here. So we do have about 15 more minutes to stick around and answer your questions. But I just got a good question from Tara, and the question is whether the applications will be paper mailed or online applications, and it will be an online application. We will have a link to the system posted on this program website by early December. So I'd say in about 3 weeks from now. And so look forward to that. And we also have forums available to help you out. So, but yes, you can use a electronic signature as long as it's from a system that allows us to verify that indeed the authorized representative did in fact electronically sign it. So as long as it's clear that you're using a recognized system that appears to be standard for electronic signatures, that would work as well. Okay, so thanks for your question, Tara. Okay, so I think the real key at this point now is to understand that while today was the beginning of technical assistance for this cycle, it's not the end. Our team is available to help you throughout the process. The work you do is critical for the success of this grant program. So please understand we're here to help, to provide guidance, to help explain the federal requirements for this program. So take advantage of our team being available to help you and eager to help you. They pride themselves in being approachable and friendly. So there's no such thing as a bad question, okay? Sam, thank you so much. On the website, we just clicked on the link to our project officers. And if you look at the chart, it's organized in the left column by county, and your contact will be the green column, which is the competitive project officer. And for example, if your project will be in Alameda County, your contact will be Megan Harrison, Alpine County, Nikki Lambert, Amador County, Esmeralda Bermudez, for example. So, please take advantage of the team being available to help you. Okay. Also, I just want to call out what we call the FAQ document one more time, and that document is really critical for the success of this program. As Richard mentioned, the program guidelines are from 2007, and this document is a compilation of answers to questions and additional clarification that we've developed over the past 13 years. So take advantage of this document as well. It's a key resource for you. And I'm seeing there's a request for the timeline. Team, can you please email the timeline to Alyssa? And if anyone else has not yet received the project timeline that Richard presented, please, you can post your email address here, and we'll send you that email timeline document today. Okay. All right. So at that, again, we look forward to your applications for 4.68 million, and we're here to help you throughout the application process. So if you have any questions before we're done, please go ahead and post them in the chat feature, and we'll answer your questions. And you can also go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll call on you to answer. You can go ahead and you can ask your question over the microphone as well. So thank you.
Go ahead, Diane.
Thank you very much. I was wondering, you said that the trail could not be alongside a roadway, but we're considering a bike path to link two county parks and our conservation district. Can that be located alongside a roadway?
So, Kyle, when Kyle went over it, he said that it would have to be separated. So it could either be distance or by some sort of structure, such as a K rail or some other type of barrier.
Okay.
So I would say as long as you have a trail that is designated as a multi-use non-motorized trail that will link two parks, and it is separated from the roadway either by distance, by whatever, and it's not in the road right of way, I think you'd be good to go.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to Natalie too for answering this in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
And thank you as well, Diane, for the question. That's really a key question.
I'm all about questions.
We're all about answering. That's what we're here
Better
for.
now than on March 1st, right?
Exactly. Yes, yes.
Well, this is an ideal thing for our bike trail that we've been looking to link the state Arthur Ripley Park, the Antelope Valley Poppy Reserve, and the Nature Conservancy Interpretive Gardens to the city of Lancaster. And we have a couple of large bike organizations up here that would love to have a long route to run. So this might be the thing.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. Yeah, just to repeat the question for everyone and just boil it down, the trail has to be off a road. So as long as it's not in a road right of way, it would be eligible. And so Richard and Natalie, I think, gave a really nice summary. But also, as Diane is hinting, you can also send us a map or photographs if you're think it's maybe a gray area between being a road right of way or not a road right of way. But and Richard has been reviewing and screening these types of projects for 20 years now, so you're in good hands here when it comes to determining if your scope and phase would be eligible or not. And so I think, as Diane said, it's better to ask now than to find out after March 1st that the phase would be ineligible. So you can definitely, visuals do help. If you are planning to propose a trail segment that is along a road, and you're not sure if it qualifies as being adjacent outside of the road right of way, sending a photograph of the property area in question is really helpful. Anything else to add about that, Rich? Based on everything you've seen over the past 20 years?
No, just other than, I mean, there definitely has to be some sort of separation. Keep in mind that bike lanes, like class 2 bike lanes and those types of things are not eligible. So that's just essentially striping the roadway. So anything less than a class 1 bikeway or a backcountry trail, I would say definitely send us in what you have in a little description of what you're planning to do, and any mapping that you may have would be greatly helpful in helping us determine whether or not your project would be eligible for Rec Trails funding.
Where could I find the description of the Class 1 and Class 2 bikeways?
Those would probably, more than likely, those are on the Caltrans website. Probably the easiest way would just be Google it, because they're large.
Okay.
They're a large department with a lot of information everywhere. So,
Okay.
but generally, Class 1 just means that it's a multi-use trail that is separated from the highway or from a road. And Class 2 are bike lanes that are striped that you see on city streets and those types of things. So those are usually striped. Then I think there's a Class 3 or Class 4 that are the green lanes that you see. I know here in Sacramento they have some green lanes that are going in downtown in downtown Sac. So and those are usually painted green, and those are kind of sometimes those are separated out by bollards or they have parking on one side, so cars parking on the street kind of provide some sort of barrier between traffic and pedestrians and bikes in that lane.
Got it.
Okay, and we have another question from Mark, and the question is, how many points did the last 5 projects to be funded receive? And I don't have that information offhand, but I will say that every cycle is unique in that it's a new set of applications. So the past points don't always have bearing on the next cycle. For one, we can't predict the competition. We don't know how much will be requested statewide. I would say the key point here to get you off to a good start is that I believe the last 2 cycles all funded the creation of new trail segments, and that was determined to have the greatest efficiency and benefits based on criteria 1 and 2. So if you're thinking of a renovation, unless we don't get new trail segment proposals, for a renovation to compete against a new trail would have to be one that is either no longer usable or very close to not being usable anymore. And that way it could be as competitive under need and deficiency. Besides that, generally, as you go through the rest of the criteria, if you feel that your project may have a weakness in one or more of the other criteria, the advice we would give you is, can you make any adjustments within your current project site to address that weakness, or you may want to consider a different project site. So that's also just a really good tip in general is, as much as possible, make adjustments to your project scope based on the criteria when feasible. Okay, we'll stick around for about 4 more minutes. And of course, if you have more questions after this workshop, our team's ready to help you. You can go ahead and raise your hand or use the chat feature. I do want to give some kudos to both Caltrans and FHWA for this program. Caltrans is delegated authority to conduct the Section 106 and environmental review. And over the years, Caltrans has been really efficient and helpful. And so that's a major lift for our applicants that are selected to move forward with the federal requirements. And also, what's also really amazing is once we send an application to FHWA for approval, FHWA has historically approved our recommended projects within only about 2 weeks, which is just amazing. So just kudos to both Caltrans and FHWA for their role in this program. And thank you everyone for your comments as well. We really appreciate it. We're glad you found this to be helpful. And again, you know, we look forward to helping you, and that's really key for the program. Your work is what makes the program successful. Okay, it looks like we have no more questions. And so, team, you can go ahead and stop the recording and we can close the workshop. Thanks, everyone.